My mom was a public school teacher and librarian, and my dad was a funeral director and embalmer and small business owner. My family has been in business in this state for 107 years and counting. Thank you. I'm extremely proud of that. And one of the reasons that I'm super proud of that is because the Republicans would have us believe that we cannot be pro-business and pro-people. That's a lie. We can't. I am. Not only am I pro-business because of my family's background, but I've also served on the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce's board of directors. I've also received the Business Advocate Award during my time in the South Carolina General Assembly from the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, a Republican-leaning organization, because those are the only ones who think that they are pro-business. What else do I have to do to show that I am not only about business, but I am about the people of this state? I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and what makes me fight the fights that I've taken on before I tell you why I'm running. Having been born and raised in Bennettsville, South Carolina, I chose to launch my campaign for governor there because I believe that small, rural, forgotten, neglected communities like my hometown epitomize the true state of our state after decades of Republican leadership. Well, I guess you can't really call it leadership, but after decades of Republican control. That has to change. The only way that we can move South Carolina forward is to make sure that we bring everybody in the state along with us. You'll hear our governor talk about jobs and the economy and, oh, people are going back to work and all these great things are happening. And some of that is true. We do have industry coming into this state. We do have jobs coming into the state that pay really well. But the truth is, South Carolinians aren't benefiting from those jobs. The people who are benefiting don't live here. They are brought in, they come here to take advantage of those opportunities because our people, homegrown South Carolinians, are not in a position to take advantage of those opportunities. Why? Because we have consistently not invested in public education. We are always, I used to describe us as last in loving it, but we're not loving it. I can't even joke about that anymore. We are last in everything that we need to be first in, and first in everything that we need to be last in. When I came to the University of South Carolina to school, to college, I had been in and out of the hospital during my childhood. My parents didn't know why. It wasn't until I came to the University of South Carolina that I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia. And I was elated to know why I had been challenged as a child. Fortunately, I'm blessed because I have a really mild form of sickle cell. Ooh. But at the same time, we had a hospital in Bennettsville back then. But even during a global pandemic, we don't have a hospital anymore. Why? Because we have a governor who has refused to focus on healthcare, who has refused to expand Medicaid like so many other Republican governors have. I don't care what their motives are. Here's the reality. Expanding Medicaid in this state would ensure that hundreds of thousands of South Carolinians have access to quality, affordable health care at a time when we desperately need it. If you think about it, this pandemic has been going on for over a year now. Why are we still dealing with it? Why? When we know, and I will ask, by a show of hands, who in this group believes in science? Wonderful. So I'm preaching to the choir because we've got a state house full of elected officials, can't call them leaders, who don't. They like to play God on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays when it comes to women's reproductive rights and freedoms. And yes, and which is why I introduced the Viagra bill in 2016, because I wanted my male colleagues to just get a taste, just a small dose of their own medicine. And so I looked at all of the requirements that were, all of the hurdles, the hoops and hurdles that were being placed in women's way when they were going to just exercise their reproductive rights. And I required those same things for men seeking Viagra. At the time I was running for the Senate, but things hadn't really started to heat up. I had spent the whole summer in committee meetings. I was appointed by the Speaker to sit in committee meetings all summer. I thought to do something productive, but it wasn't. It was to defund Planned Parenthood, which, as most of you already know, is not a state agency. It was not around a bill or anything that we really had to debate or discuss. It was just an all-out effort to pander to their base. But we spent an inordinate amount of time, energy, resources, just debating that, when that doesn't even begin to describe the challenges that everyday people in this state are facing. They weren't facing them then, and they certainly aren't facing them now. And I introduced that bill, the Viagra bill, thinking that it would broaden the discussion in South Carolina. That's how naive I was. I thought, okay, we need to broaden this discussion in South Carolina, and it did. But it also broadened the discussion across the country. I was asked to be on all of the major media outlets, and I was. International media outlets were calling. I'm like, whoa, this is a lot bigger than I thought. And what that said to me was, we were doing exactly then what we're doing now, and that is pandering. Our elected officials are pandering to a very small, vocal minority of people. Yep. So, tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a fighter. Part of the reason that I have had to fight is because I got elected in 2010 to the House. I served in the House for 6 years. I've now served in the Senate for 4. My first legislative session in the South Carolina House was, we were about to do redistricting. And that's not an issue that is really sexy. People don't want to really talk about redistricting. It's like, even at gatherings like this, people are like, is that what you're going to talk about? Is redistricting, redrawing the lines? But here's the thing. We are choosing, as elected officials, your elected officials are choosing their voters. Our voters aren't choosing us. And so my first year in the House, I thought, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and learn everything I can about this process. And I did that. I had just won in a swing district. The black voting population of my district that year, my first time running for anything in my life, no plan to run for anything ever. And I had roughly 34% of black voters in my district. And I won handily in a three-person primary without a runoff. No name recognition in the district. My only claim to fame was that I was brutally honest on the campaign trail. When I went into people's homes, I didn't take that lightly. I told them the truth. And I had people, even on my team, who were saying, you can't be that honest. You can't go into people's houses and tell them what you will and won't do if you are elected to the House. You can't do that. You can't drive your car. Because at the time, I guess I had a decent car. And I'm like, why can't I drive my car? Why would I not drive my car if I'm going into Kershaw County? I live in Richland County. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell y'all that. Senate District 22 is Richland and Kershaw counties. Richland is Columbia, the capital city. Kershaw is Camden, Elgin, Lugoff, I represent a very small portion of Kershaw now, but I represented a larger portion then. So won my race against a Tea Party candidate in the general, pretty handily. And I got ready to learn more about this whole redistricting thing, only to discover that the Republicans didn't like my district. They didn't appreciate the diversity of my district like I did. So they packed my district with black voters. And I didn't understand why, so I inquired. And I was told, oh, we're doing it for you, so that you can have a safe district. And you only have to worry about a primary. And I'm like, really? For me? No. Absolutely you're not doing it for me. But that prompted me to look and do my own research. And what I discovered was three things. The Republicans had a national strategy, and my district was perfect. It was the perfect target for that strategy. Their national strategy was to blacken swing districts like mine, which would have the following impacts. Now I'm gonna give these to y'all, and I want you to tell me if any of them sound familiar. So the first thing that they wanted to do was to further marginalize the voices of the minority. That sound familiar to anybody? Second thing they wanted to do was to rid the Democratic Party of white Democrats. And just last year, we lost my friends, Senator Vincent Shaheen, who ran twice for governor against Nikki Haley. We lost my friend, Senator Glenn Reese from Spartanburg, South Carolina. We lost Representative Lori Funderburk, also from Kershaw County, who was all in my Kershaw County delegation. And we lost Representative Mandy Powers Norrell, our dear friend and supporter, who represented Lancaster. And the third thing that they wanted to do was to create a permanent Republican majority stronghold. Fast forward 10 years later, and what do we have today? All of that has come to fruition. They are seeing the fruits of their labor today. I wish I could have convinced my caucus, my minority leader, of that fact. I went to him and I told him what I had discovered about the Republican strategy. And he said, oh, we got lawyers to help us. We're gonna fight that. And when we got to the meeting, the lawyers said, yeah, y'all need to fight that. And my caucus said, no, we don't need to fight that, because we like our safe districts. And you just got here. You need to sit down, little girl. You just got here. Don't come in here messing with our districts. We like our districts the way they are. And I said then, we will lose. We are being short-sighted, and we will lose. And I had to join and help with a civil lawsuit. That was unsuccessful because we did not have the backing of my own caucus. And I hated being in the House because it wasn't anything like I thought it would be. The very people that I thought were aligned with me on the issues were the very ones that I had to fight just to hold on or try to impress upon them the need to hold on to the diversity of my district. Because when we don't have diversity and equity and inclusion, especially in politics, people will suffer. They will be marginalized. They will be overlooked. They will be discounted, disenfranchised, discredited. And that is exactly what we've seen happen over the last 10 years. So, I'll fast forward a little bit and talk to you. That was the first fight. So when I ran for the Senate, I had started to discover, I had a few more fights after that, where I had just gotten comfortable being uncomfortable, because I realized that the people, some in the Republican Party, some in the Democratic Party, seemed to be more about self-preservation than they were truly representing the needs of everyday South Carolinians. And I had a real problem with that, and it made me dislike politics in ways that I never thought I would. And I decided that I wasn't going to run for anything else ever. But with each fight, and each time I had to stand alone, just like I'm standing here alone in this space right now, I got stronger. And my convictions got so much stronger. And instead of looking at it as punishment, I thought God was punishing me. But I later discovered that He was preparing me for doing exactly what I'm doing right now. And that is advocating for the people of my district and the state. I will tell you that there aren't many fights that I have not taken on, even when I had to stand alone, even when I had to fight single-handedly. And the reason is because if I didn't, the people that I represented would not have a voice. They wouldn't have a fighting chance. Because so many of the people that you guys keep sending back to the State House, for whatever your reasons, you may think, oh, I know them. Oh, they've been serving for almost as long as I've been living. Oh, they go to my church. Don't lose sight of why you send us to do the people's work. Because a lot of times when my colleagues have gotten there, many of them have stayed too long, and they have forgotten about those who've sent them to advocate for them. So that was my challenge. But in 2016, something else happened, as God would have it. There was an incident that happened at a high school in Columbia, Spring Valley High School. Any of you familiar with Spring Valley High School? You may not be, but you may remember a video that went viral. It was of a young African-American female student who allegedly refused to put her cell phone away when asked by her teacher. And her teacher and administrator called a school resource officer in from the Richland County Sheriff's Department. And he violently ejected this young lady from her desk in front of all of her classmates and arrested her and took her to jail for refusing to put away her cell phone. She said nothing in the video. She did nothing in the video. I immediately called the sheriff because I have him on speed dial. And I'm like, I am not believing that this video is real. Are you aware of it? Because I could not imagine that something that heinous could happen in my community. And Spring Valley wasn't in my House district, but it was in the Senate district that I was running for. So I had just gotten back in the good graces of my delegation members that I had been fighting. And they were trying to help. And they said, Mia, you need to stay out of that. That's a school district fight. That's not your fight. If you want to lose this race for the Senate, then you get involved in that. And I'm like, okay. And I got involved. Why? Because I'm a mom. Why? Because that could have been my baby. Why? Because just after I finished law school, I went to work for a Republican Attorney General by the name of Charlie Condon. He hired me to develop protocols and curricula for law enforcement, solicitors, judges, and victim advocates to follow when investigating, prosecuting, and adjudicating violent crimes against women. At a time when our state was #1 in the nation for women who are murdered by men. Not just #1 for women who are abused by men, but we were #1 in the nation for women who are murdered by men. And since that time, we've been #1 in the nation a few times. We are still in the top 10. I think we're 6 right now as we speak. He hired me to do that work, and it taught me so much about the dynamics and the culture of this state. Many of the things that I learned while doing that work I hadn't been exposed to. But here's the thing. That work was possible, it was made possible because of the efforts of a United States Senator by the name of Joseph Biden. And it showed me what can happen when Democrats and Republicans are aligned and working towards the same goal. The goal was to save the lives of women and children in South Carolina. So many have died as a result of domestic violence. That was the goal. And I'm super proud of the fact that a Republican Attorney General was willing to champion a bill that was made possible and put into law by a Democrat who happened to be a United States Senator. And I know that all of you are thinking like I'm thinking, okay, well those days are over because of the hyper-partisan environment that we find ourselves in now. But those days, I'm here to tell you, are not over. When I introduced my Disturbing Schools bill, what I learned about the Disturbing Schools law, when that happened to the young lady at Spring Valley and I refused to not fight, I discovered that that law had single-handedly sent at least 30,000 students from their schools to DJJ. That one law had put 30,000 South Carolina students into the school-to-prison pipeline. Why? Because it had morphed into something it was never meant to be. The law was created to keep students inside the schools safe from outside agitators. And so I took it back to its original intent. I introduced a bill that would only allow students to be arrested in the schools if they communicated a threat against another student, teacher, staff member, anybody. Of course, if they brandished a weapon or had a weapon, it communicated a threat in any way. And the other way that they could be arrested is if they were suspended or expelled and refused to leave the school grounds. after being suspended or expelled. Or they return to the school to do harm to somebody after being suspended or expelled. To me, those were the reasons that the law was put into place in the first place. And it just made sense to go back to that. The bill did not pass when I was in the South Carolina House. And I was devastated because SLED worked against it. The Sheriff's Association worked against it. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, this is not right. We have to do something. That's 30,000 children that we have put into the corrections system. Like, no, I can't just let that go. And I thought, they better hope I don't win the Senate seat. And guess what? I won the Senate seat. So when I got to the Senate, I reintroduced it. And it passed overwhelmingly, unanimously out of the South Carolina Senate. And I'm pretty sure unanimously or close out of the South Carolina House. So that bill, even after dying a slow and painful death in the House, when I got to the Senate, we got it passed. And it is now changing the way we treat students in South Carolina schools. And I'm extremely proud of that. So after I left the Attorney General's office, I was appointed by a Democratic governor, Jim Hodges, to direct the State Office of Victim Assistance. And my team and I were tasked with administering and managing the state's Crime Victims Compensation Fund. And we did that for people across South Carolina. Under my leadership, that fund, it was a multi-million-dollar fund, received national accolades and was highlighted as a model for other states in the areas of fiscal responsibility and expansion of user access. Why? Because I believe that people in our rural communities, especially those who have been victimized and hurt by crimes that they did not commit, I believe that they shouldn't have to drive to Columbia to access the services that the state provides. So I opened rural satellite offices in underserved communities like my hometown. Started with my hometown because, like I said, we can't move South Carolina forward when we know we're leaving so many counties that have been forgotten and neglected behind. So, my reasons for running are basically three. We need somebody in the governor's office who has the courage to lead, the guts to govern, and the experience to hit the ground running on day one. I am the only candidate in this primary who can say that. The only candidate in this primary who can say that. We need somebody who has worked in the executive branch for a Republican administration and a Democratic administration. We need somebody who has served and fought the fights that I've mentioned in the South Carolina legislature for the past 10 years. And I've been fighting the status quo. I will continue to fight for as long as I serve. And I've won in swing districts. I know a lot of attention is given to winning. And winning is extremely important. I plan to win next June and next November, because I believe that although it appears we're outnumbered, we really aren't. There's so many South Carolinians who believe, like us, that every South Carolinian should have an opportunity to thrive. Not just survive, not just live paycheck to paycheck and worry and wonder and spend very little time with their children, raising their families, because they're having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. I believe that we can create a South Carolina where everybody can thrive, where people can earn wages they can actually live on. It's not a foreign concept. When I think about the 10 hours I just spent last week sitting in subcommittee meetings, not about a bill, but it was a venting session for Henry McMaster's people, the ones that he panders to, the ones that have made this pandemic so much worse. I sat in a room full, probably about the same amount of people or more, of unvaccinated, unmasked people in a very small subcommittee hearing room. And they went off about all the things that we're keeping them from doing. We're standing in between them and their physician-patient relationship. I'm like, hello, I've been singing that song since I introduced the Viagra bill. Y'all been standing in between women and their physicians and that relationship. But it wasn't even about that. These are people who want us to get out of their way so that their doctors can prescribe ivermectin, which is a horse and cow dewormer. And they want to move, they don't want to deal with crowded hospitals that they've created. They want us to make exceptions for them so that they can go to the front of the line to get the monoclonal antibody treatments that Henry got, that Donald Trump got, that everybody who has means seems to have access to. But everyday people are dying. Why do we live in a state where 12,000 people have already succumbed to this virus and it's okay? Where is the fight? Where is the fight for the people of this state? I'm telling you, you've got a warrior in me. I will not give up. I will not relent. I will not let it go. And I'm so used to people telling me to let it go because they get tired of hearing me and tired of, I've even had a few folks in my own party say, you need to stop because the stuff that you're doing and saying, I'm not doing and saying. I'm like, well, you need to stop because the stuff that I'm doing and saying, you need to be doing and saying. We are being drowned out by the silence of people who think like us. Henry and my Republican colleagues in the House and Senate are pandering to a very loud, vocal minority of people in this state and giving them a captive audience like they had us in that subcommittee room. Just listening to them rant about their, people in there, they've lost family members. We're murderers. We're this, we're that. I'm like, no, you don't want to wear a mask. You refuse to get vaccinated. You have contributed greatly to the demise not only of your loved ones, but of your community members. That you don't have, I could go on all day about what these so-called pro-lifers are doing to not help the living. I could go on all day, but I won't. I am running for governor because when I talk to my sons about the future, I have 2 young adult sons, and when I talk to them about the future, they don't want to live in this state as adults. And I got so tired and heartbroken. I got tired of trying to convince them of why they should. Because I get it. I see it. They don't believe that their voices are valued here. They don't believe that their lives are valued here. That they are able to live freely. They don't believe that they are able to have the opportunities and the quality of life and the pay that they need and deserve. And so I said, I have to change that. But I can't change it by myself. I thought about my classmates. Growing up in Bennettsville, it was all I could do to get out of the big city of Bennettsville and come to the bigger city of Columbia. But my classmates didn't do that. And I wouldn't have done that, but for my dad. But for my dad, I would have gone to Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, where my grandparents lived. But he said no. He said, I'm glad you liked Hampton, but your money's going to the University of South Carolina. I hope you show up. But with my sons, my oldest just graduated a few years ago from college. He went to PC, played football at Presbyterian College here in South Carolina. And he lives and works in Columbia, just bought his first home in his 20s. I'm super proud of both of them. But he doesn't want to stay. Mm-hmm. He's constantly showing me, Mom, look what they're doing in Raleigh. Mom, look what they're doing in Charlotte. Mom, did you see what they're doing in Atlanta? Like, okay, I mean, really? You want us to stay here? My baby went to Colorado State University, just graduated this year, plays tight end at Colorado State, and he's like, Mom, I don't ever see myself coming back to South Carolina until you become governor. That's my incentive. That is my incentive. But I thought about my classmates, many of whom left the state to go to school in other states and never came back. And I thought about the generations of people, young people, that we keep losing that way. They go in search of better opportunities. They raise their families in other states. And all of their children, the only connection that they are likely to have to South Carolina is, oh, my grandparents live there. Oh, my aunties live there. Oh, I've got family there. I love going there for the summers. But we have lost a generation of contributions and perspectives and ideas and people who can actually make this state as great as she can be. We've got to get back to that. We talk a lot about losing teachers, and we are. And we get it, because that's a life that has become under Henry McMaster's leadership. That has become a life or death proposition, simply going into a classroom today. And we talked about losing nurses and healthcare practitioners, and we are. But what we don't talk about are the younger generations of talent. We are losing our best and brightest every single day to other states, and we will never get most of them back. Unless we change that, our state is going to be one that even we don't recognize in the very foreseeable future. So I ask you, I want to take your questions, so I won't talk much longer. But I want to ask you to really think about that. Think about the future of our state and the changes that we all know we have to make to create a state where all of us can thrive, where we have leaders who believe in science and listen to the public health experts, for those of us who are not public health experts, where we protect our environment, where we believe in justice, we truly believe in justice for all. The only way to change those things is to focus on the reasons we don't currently have them. It's about leadership, it's about courage, it's about connection. I serve with people, many of whom, I used to joke about this too, I don't joke anymore as much, but I serve with people who have been serving almost as long as I've been living. That's a problem. Not just because they've been serving that long, but because they've been serving that long, they've lost that sense of connection to what everyday people are grappling with. So I urge you, if anything that I've said tonight has resonated with you, and you want to make South Carolina a place that we can all be proud to call home. For my children, for your grandchildren, I ask you to join us. we need you in this fight. I can't do it alone. I am very capable of standing here in my own space, comfortable and confident that I will take on anybody at any time. I will fight anybody at any time when it comes to the people of this state and making this state better. But I'm also willing to reach my hand out and build coalitions of support around the issues that matter to all of us. And I need your help. I need your help in that. We can no longer sit idly by and let this state continue to flounder and go backward. So if you'd like to join me, please look at your the cards that have been distributed. There's a part of it that can be scanned so that you can donate and contribute to our campaign. We need your contributions, we need your prayers, and we need your support. We need you to volunteer if you can, and we need you to help spread the word that there is somebody who is vying for this office, who is willing to do what I have to do to fight for everybody in this state. You shouldn't have to know somebody to be somebody here in South Carolina. And I'm committed to change it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we are going to, I could listen for another hour, and it's past most everybody's bedtime. We are open for questions, and also keep in mind